Emma had always been the kind of person who noticed small details that others often overlooked. She worked long hours as a waitress at a small, cozy diner in a quiet part of town. The kind of place where everyone knew your name, and the smell of fresh coffee and sizzling pancakes greeted you before you even stepped inside. Despite her long shifts and tired feet, Emma always carried herself with a sense of purpose. She wasn't rich, and life hadn't been easy for her, but she believed in the little things, small acts of kindness that could brighten someone's day. It was a late afternoon, and the sun was beginning to dip behind the buildings, casting a golden glow over the streets. Emma had just finished her shift and was walking home, tired but content. Her uniform, a simple black dress with a white apron, was slightly wrinkled, and her shoes carried the dust of a day spent running between tables. She was thinking about nothing in particular, just the comfort of a hot shower and a quiet dinner when she noticed something unusual up ahead. Near the corner store, an elderly woman was struggling with several heavy grocery bags. Emma could see the strain in the woman's posture, her back bent, her hands shaking under the weight of the bags. The woman's face was a mask of determination, but her eyes betrayed frustration and worry. Emma's instinct kicked in immediately. Without a second thought, she quickened her pace toward the woman. "Excuse me, ma'am," Emma said gently as she approached. "Do you need some help with those?" The elderly woman looked up, startled at first. Her eyes were wide, and for a moment, she seemed unsure whether to accept help from a stranger. Then, after a brief hesitation, a small, relieved smile appeared on her face. "Oh yes, please," she said, her voice soft but grateful. "These bags are much heavier than I expected." Emma knelt slightly and began to lift one of the heavier bags. The weight was significant, but Emma didn't mind. She had done manual labor her whole life, and her muscles were accustomed to effort. As she handed the bags to the woman's car, she noticed the meticulous care the elderly lady had taken in arranging her groceries. Every item had been placed in a specific spot, almost as if she had a system to keep her shopping organized. "Thank you so much, dear," the woman said again, her voice tinged with relief. "I didn't know how I would manage these by myself." Emma smiled warmly, brushing off the gratitude. "It's no trouble at all. I'm happy to help." There was a brief moment of silence as Emma finished placing the last bag in the car. The sun glinted off the metal of the car, casting reflections that danced across the pavement. Emma noticed a photograph stuck to the dashboard through the windshield. A family photo, the edges slightly worn. The elderly woman's eyes followed Emma's gaze. "That's my son," she said softly. He's very busy, and I rarely get to see him these days. That photo is one of the few reminders I have." Emma nodded, sensing the pride and subtle sadness in her tone. She didn't ask for more details. Sometimes, people just needed someone to listen, even if it was only through small gestures like helping carry groceries. As Emma straightened up, brushing her hands against her apron, she noticed the woman's eyes linger on her longer than usual. There was a depth to her gaze, a mix of gratitude, relief, and something Emma couldn't quite place. The woman smiled again, this time more gently, almost as if she had made a silent connection with Emma. Before Emma could turn to leave, the woman insisted, "Please, take this bottle of water. You must be tired from work." Emma shook her head, laughing softly. "I'm fine, really. Helping you is more than enough." But the elderly woman wouldn't take no for an answer. "I insist. It's just a small token of my appreciation." She handed over the water, and Emma accepted it with a smile. After loading the last of the bags into the car, Emma waved goodbye. "Take care, ma'am," she said, feeling a quiet sense of satisfaction. There was no need for anything more, no reward, no recognition. The simple act of helping someone, seeing their tension ease, was reward enough. As Emma walked away, she didn't know that this brief encounter would ripple far beyond that sunny afternoon. At that very moment, neither she nor the elderly woman could have imagined that something completely unexpected was about to happen. Something that would change both of their lives in ways they never could have predicted. Emma's steps were light as she continued down the street, the cool breeze brushing against her face. She thought about how sometimes the smallest choices, pausing to help someone, offering a hand when it's needed, can lead to the most extraordinary consequences. Today, she had simply done what she felt was right. That's all. Yet, little did she know, this small act of kindness was about to set off a chain of events that would touch wealth, health, and fate itself in ways she had never imagined. After Emma had helped the elderly woman with her groceries and walked a few steps down the quiet street, she thought about the brief encounter. It wasn't the first time she had helped someone in need, but there was something about the woman's soft eyes and gentle smile that stayed with her. She shrugged and told herself she had done what anyone would do. After all, it was a small act, just a few bags of groceries, but the feeling of being able to make a difference, even in a tiny way, was comforting. Meanwhile, the elderly woman, Mrs. Thompson, sat in the driver's seat of her car, catching her breath. Her hands still trembled slightly from the strain of carrying the heavy groceries, but now that they were safely inside the car, a wave of relief washed over her. She looked at Emma walking away and felt a mix of emotions: gratitude, admiration, and an unusual curiosity. She had met kind people before, of course, but there was something different about Emma. She was young, and yet there was a quiet strength in her. Not the kind of strength that comes from wealth or position, but a strength born of compassion and a willingness to act without expectation. Mrs. Thompson wanted to express her gratitude properly. She called out to Emma just as she was about to turn the corner. "Young lady, wait!" Emma paused and looked back, seeing Mrs. Thompson leaning slightly out of the car window, holding something in her hand. "What is it?" Emma asked, walking back a few steps. "I insist you take this," Mrs. Thompson said, handing Emma a small envelope. It was plain, unassuming, and for a moment, Emma hesitated. She rarely accepted gifts from strangers. It went against her nature. But there was sincerity in the woman's eyes, and something told Emma that this wasn't about the money or material value. It was about appreciation. Emma took the envelope carefully, feeling the weight of the gesture. "I really can't accept this," she said softly. "I was just helping. That's enough for me." Mrs. Thompson shook her head gently. "Please, just a small token," she said, smiling. There was a warmth in her tone, a kind of insistence that Emma couldn't easily refuse. "It's not about paying you back. It's about acknowledging what you did, because kindness like yours deserves recognition, even if it's small." Emma's lips curved into a reluctant smile. She opened the envelope slightly, only to see a simple card inside with a short note written in neat handwriting. "Thank you for reminding me that there is still goodness in the world. Your kindness has made a difference today." Emma's eyes softened as she read the words. It was rare that anyone expressed gratitude so openly. People often said, "Thank you." Of course, but this note carried emotion, thoughtfulness, and a depth that touched her unexpectedly. She looked up at Mrs. Thompson, who was now waiting patiently, her hands folded gently in her lap, and felt a surprising sense of connection to this stranger. "You really didn't have to do this," Emma said finally, feeling a mix of humility and warmth. "I know," Mrs. Thompson replied, "but sometimes, when you meet someone who does something good without expecting anything in return, it's worth acknowledging. That's all I'm trying to do." For a few moments they simply stood there, looking at each other. It was quiet except for the occasional hum of a passing car and the distant chatter of people finishing their shopping. Emma realized that this was one of those rare moments when two strangers connected over something simple yet meaningful. It wasn't about money, status, or any kind of reward. It was about human connection, empathy, and shared understanding. Mrs. Thompson then leaned closer slightly, lowering her voice. "You know, it's rare to meet someone like you these days," she said. "People rush past each other, too busy with their lives to notice. But you stopped. You noticed, and you acted. That's something special." Emma felt a warmth in her chest. She wasn't used to receiving compliments, especially from strangers. Her life was filled with long shifts, bills to pay, and constant hustle. But this recognition, so genuine, so heartfelt, struck a chord she didn't know existed. She nodded, her voice soft. "Thank you." That means a lot to me. Mrs. Thompson smiled again, this time with a subtle glimmer in her eyes. I hope you continue to do what you do, she said. The world needs more people like you, Emma. At that moment, Emma realized that helping someone didn't just impact the person receiving help. It affected her too. She felt lighter, happier, and somehow more connected to the world around her. It was as if the act of kindness had created a small ripple, touching not just the elderly woman but also herself. Mrs. Thompson started to drive away slowly, waving once more at Emma. Emma waved back, watching the car disappear around the corner. She stood there for a moment, holding the envelope and the card, thinking about the strange, beautiful way life sometimes worked. A simple act, carrying groceries for a stranger, had led to a connection that neither of them would forget. Little did Emma know, this small interaction was only the beginning. The ripple created by her simple act of kindness was about to reach further than she could have imagined. Something unexpected was already unfolding, something that would test courage, empathy, and the true impact of doing good without expecting anything in return. She pocketed the card, smiling to herself, and continued her walk home. The sun had now dipped lower, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and orange. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, a quiet confidence that the world could still be brightened by small actions. That day, she hadn't just helped someone carry groceries. She had reminded herself, in the simplest yet most powerful way, that kindness mattered, and that even the smallest deeds could create profound effects. Emma had just finished putting the card Mrs. Thompson had given her safely in her bag. She continued walking home, her steps slow and thoughtful. The evening air was cool, carrying the scent of fresh bread from a nearby bakery and the faint hum of traffic from the main street. The city was starting to wind down. Shopkeepers were closing their stores, and people were hurrying home to prepare dinner. For Emma, it was just another evening, and yet the encounter with the elderly woman lingered in her mind like a soft, warm echo. She had nearly reached her apartment when her phone rang. The screen showed an unknown number. Normally, she might have ignored it, but something in her gut told her to answer. She picked up, her voice polite but tired. "Hello." On the other end, a man's voice came through, urgent and a little shaky. "Is this Emma?" "Yes, speaking," she replied, her curiosity piqued. "Who's this?" "This is Officer Daniels from the City Police Department. I'm calling about an emergency. I believe you may know an elderly woman named Mrs. Thompson." Emma's heart skipped a beat. Yes, I helped her with groceries just a little while ago. Is everything okay?" There was a pause. Emma could almost hear the commotion in the background. Sirens, footsteps, muffled voices. Then the officer spoke again, his tone serious. "Her son, he's had a medical emergency. He collapsed near the store where you helped her. We're trying to stabilize him, but we thought you should know because you were the last person to assist Mrs. Thompson." Emma froze. A million thoughts raced through her mind. Collapsed? Her heart thumped in her chest. She had only met Mrs. Thompson for a few minutes, but the image of her smiling, grateful face was still vivid. Now, the thought that her son was in danger made her stomach twist with worry. "Oh my, is he going to be okay?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. The officer's tone softened, though the urgency remained. "We're doing everything we can. Paramedics are on the scene. We just thought you might want to be aware, since you were with her moments before this happened." Emma felt a strange mix of fear and responsibility. She hadn't done much, just carried a few bags, but now she felt connected to the situation in a way she hadn't expected. "Thank you for letting me know," she said, trying to steady her voice. "Please, I hope he's all right." After hanging up, Emma stood on the sidewalk for a few moments, staring at the ground. She thought about how quickly life could change. One moment she was performing a small act of kindness, and the next she was linked in some small way to a life-threatening emergency. It made her feel vulnerable yet oddly alert. Life was fragile, and it had a strange way of reminding people not to take anything for granted. Curiosity and concern got the better of her. Emma decided to return to the store to see what was happening. She walked briskly, her heart pounding in her chest. As she approached, she could see flashing red and blue lights in the distance. A small crowd had gathered near the curb, and several paramedics were crouched over a man lying on the pavement. People were whispering anxiously, some trying to take pictures, others making calls. The scene was chaotic but controlled, the paramedics moving with precision and calm despite the tension. Emma's breath caught when she recognized the man on the ground. Even from a distance, she could tell that this wasn't just any man. He was dressed in an expensive suit, and the presence of bodyguards and assistants suggested he was someone important. She overheard snippets of conversation from the crowd. "It's Richard Thompson, the millionaire businessman," someone whispered. Emma's eyes widened. This was Mrs. Thompson's son, the same one whose photograph she had noticed in the car. She felt a surge of disbelief. The connection between her simple act of helping his mother and this crisis felt surreal. Just moments ago, she had been walking home, thinking about kindness and gratitude. Now, she was witnessing the kind of event that could change lives in an instant. Emma edged closer, careful not to intrude but wanting to understand. The paramedics were administering oxygen, checking his vitals, and speaking quietly to one another. Richard Thompson, despite his wealth and status, looked completely vulnerable in this moment. Human, fragile, and reliant on others for help. Emma felt a pang of empathy. Here was a man who, to the world, seemed untouchable, and yet here he was, lying helpless on the sidewalk, his life in the hands of strangers. As the paramedics prepared to transport him to the hospital, Mrs. Thompson appeared. Her face was pale, her hands shaking slightly as she approached the stretcher. Emma could see the love and fear etched into her expression. She whispered something to the paramedics and moved closer to her son, holding his hand gently, speaking words of comfort. Emma watched quietly, her heart swelling with compassion for both mother and son. It was clear that, even in moments of extreme stress, human connection mattered more than anything else. Emma remembered the brief conversation she had shared with Mrs. Thompson, the gratitude in her eyes, the gentle insistence on giving her a card. Now, seeing the woman's worry for her son, Emma understood how deep that bond was, and how her small act of kindness had become part of a larger chain of events. As the ambulance doors closed and the vehicle drove off with sirens blaring, Emma stood there for a moment, processing everything. She realized that life was unpredictable, and sometimes, the smallest actions could unexpectedly intersect with major events. Helping someone might seem trivial, but in the grand scheme of life, those actions could matter more than anyone ever imagined. Emma finally turned and continued home, her mind racing. She didn't know what would happen next, or how the story would unfold, but she felt an odd mixture of hope and tension. Her simple gesture of kindness had linked her to something much bigger, a reminder that no one truly acts in isolation, and that every action, no matter how small, has the potential to ripple outward in ways we cannot predict. Emma had barely caught her breath after seeing the ambulance speed away with flashing lights when she noticed a small group of people gathering around the scene where Richard Thompson had collapsed. Even from a distance, she could feel the tension in the air. Whispers, worried murmurs, and the occasional gasp filled the street. It was the kind of atmosphere that made your chest tighten. A strange mix of fear, curiosity, and helplessness all at once. She edged closer, careful not to intrude, and saw the paramedics moving quickly yet cautiously. Richard Thompson, despite his reputation as a wealthy and powerful businessman, looked completely human now, weak, pale, and vulnerable. His normally sharp and confident features were softened by the sudden fragility of illness. He wasn't in a boardroom now, negotiating million-dollar deals. He was lying on the pavement, utterly reliant on the care of strangers. Emma's mind raced as she tried to process what she was seeing. Just moments ago, she had helped his mother with groceries, smiling and chatting casually. Now, she was witnessing her small act of kindness collide with something much larger. A life-or-death emergency for the woman's son. It was surreal. The paramedics checked his vitals, carefully placing an oxygen mask over his face. They murmured instructions to each other, measuring his pulse, checking for responsiveness, and monitoring the color of his skin. Emma noticed the seriousness in their movements. This wasn't a simple fainting spell. This was something much more critical, something that required immediate action and professional attention. Nearby, Mrs. Thompson stood frozen for a moment, her face pale and tense. She clutched her handbag tightly, her knuckles white, as she watched the professionals work on her son. Her eyes, which had seemed calm and composed earlier, were now filled with raw fear. Emma felt a pang of empathy. She had seen the gratitude in this woman's eyes just minutes ago, and now she was witnessing the depth of her love and worry. A crowd had gathered, murmuring softly. Some people took out their phones, trying to capture the moment, while others simply stood silently, unsure whether to intervene or keep their distance. Emma felt a mix of emotions: concern, curiosity, and a deep awareness of how quickly life could change. One second, someone is walking along the street, and the next, their life hangs in the balance. One of the paramedics spoke gently to Mrs. Thompson. "We need you to step back, ma'am, so we can safely move him. He's stable for now, but we have to get him to the hospital." Mrs. Thompson nodded, though her hands trembled as she did so. She whispered a few reassuring words to her son, stroking his hair lightly and murmuring his name. Emma noticed the tears brimming in her eyes, though she didn't move closer. It wasn't her place, yet she couldn't look away. The moment was intense, filled with a raw, emotional reality that no wealth or status could shield someone from. The paramedics carefully lifted Richard onto the stretcher, his body limp but his breathing steady, thanks to their quick intervention. Emma saw how delicate the process was. One wrong movement could have caused serious harm. They secured him with straps, adjusted the oxygen mask, and moved swiftly to load him into the ambulance. The doors closed with a soft thud, and the siren wailed as the vehicle prepared to depart. Emma stayed on the sidewalk, feeling a strange sense of helplessness. She had helped his mother only moments before, but now she realized that life was unpredictable. A small act of kindness could intersect with something monumental, something completely beyond anyone's control. The thought made her heart race. She remembered Mrs. Thompson's warm, grateful eyes from earlier and felt a surge of concern for both of them. As the ambulance pulled away, Emma noticed the reactions of the people around her. Some whispered prayers under their breath. Others simply shook their heads in disbelief. A few talked about how unusual it was for someone so powerful to collapse in public. Rumors began to spread quickly, though none of them mattered to Emma. She was thinking about the fragility of life and how a simple, ordinary afternoon had turned into a moment of crisis. In the distance, Emma could see Mrs. Thompson being assisted by one of the paramedics. She was still holding onto a small part of the stretcher, her face streaked with tears. Emma felt compelled to approach, but something held her back. She realized that her role had already been fulfilled. She had helped the woman earlier, and now it was the professionals and family who needed to take charge. Her heart, however, ached with empathy for both mother and son. The event left Emma shaken. She sat down on a nearby bench, her mind racing. She thought about how quickly circumstances could change, how life could go from ordinary to extraordinary in the blink of an eye. Just minutes ago, she had been walking home, thinking about gratitude and kindness. Now, she had witnessed a real-life emergency, a shocking collapse that reminded her of the fragility of human life. Emma also thought about the power of small actions. Helping Mrs. Thompson had seemed insignificant, yet it now felt like a part of something larger. In her mind, she replayed the moments from earlier. The woman's grateful smile, the insistence on giving her a card, the warm exchange they had shared. It struck her that even in the face of chaos and emergency, small acts of kindness were important. They created connections, built trust, and reminded people of humanity, even in the most intense situations. As the streets slowly returned to normal, Emma remained seated, lost in thought. The flashing lights faded, the murmurs of the crowd diminished, and the evening grew quieter. But the memory of Richard Thompson's collapse, and the fear and love she had witnessed, lingered. Emma knew that life would never look quite the same again. She had glimpsed the stark reality of vulnerability, the way sudden events could challenge even the wealthiest and most powerful, and she understood, more deeply than ever, the value of empathy and human connection. Emma had been standing on the sidewalk for what felt like hours, though in reality it was only a short while. The ambulance carrying Richard Thompson had disappeared around the corner, its sirens fading into the distance, but the memory of the scene remained vivid in her mind. Her hands were still slightly trembling, her heart still racing from the intensity of what she had witnessed. She had helped Mrs. Thompson with her groceries just moments ago, and now she had watched her son, a powerful and wealthy businessman, collapse in public. The connection between those two events felt almost surreal to her. As she started to walk back toward her apartment, she noticed a familiar figure approaching from the direction of the hospital. It was Mrs. Thompson herself, walking slowly, supported by a young medical assistant who had stayed behind to ensure she was okay. Emma paused, unsure if she should speak up or remain at a distance. Something in her gut told her that this was a moment to connect again, not for her sake, but to offer a quiet presence of support. "Emma," Mrs. Thompson's voice called out softly as she neared. Emma's eyes widened in surprise. The woman remembered her name. She approached, smiling faintly, though there was a tiredness in her expression that hadn't been there before. "Yes, it's me," Emma replied, her voice calm but warm. "Are you all right?" Mrs. Thompson nodded slowly, her eyes scanning the street as though reliving the moments from just before her son was taken away. "I'm managing," she said softly. "It's been overwhelming, but I wanted to find you and to thank you properly for earlier." Emma's lips curved into a small smile. "It was nothing. Really, I was just helping." "No," Mrs. Thompson insisted, shaking her head gently. "It wasn't nothing. You have no idea how much it meant to me to have someone there at that moment. You didn't just help me with groceries. You reminded me that kindness still exists in the world." Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had never considered her small act to be extraordinary. To her, it was a simple gesture, helping someone carry heavy bags, but Mrs. Thompson's words gave it a weight Emma had never imagined. Before Emma could respond, a black luxury car pulled up to the curb. The driver, a calm and professional man, stepped out and opened the door. Emma recognized the figure inside almost immediately, Richard Thompson himself, looking slightly pale but alert. He had been discharged from the ambulance temporarily for a brief checkup in the car, or perhaps he had insisted on sitting up for a moment. His eyes were sharp, intelligent, and calculating, but there was something softened in them today, an unmistakable vulnerability that Emma had never seen in the stories she had read about him in the newspapers. Richard stepped out of the car, supported lightly by a medical assistant. He paused when he saw Emma standing nearby. His gaze lingered, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. This wasn't a formal meeting and it wasn't planned. It was a chance encounter, a brief crossing of paths made possible by circumstance and Emma's simple act of kindness. "Emma," Richard said, his voice surprisingly gentle, given his usual public persona. "I hear you helped my mother just before all of this happened." Emma blinked, taken aback. She hadn't expected him to speak directly to her, and certainly not so calmly. "Yes," she said softly, unsure what else to say. "I just helped her with her groceries. That's all." Richard smiled faintly, though there was a tiredness in his expression. "It's more than that," he said. "Most people walk past without noticing. Most people are too focused on themselves. But you noticed and you acted. That matters." Emma felt a flush of warmth. She wasn't used to being recognized in this way, especially by someone so influential. And yet, there was a sincerity in his voice that made her realize he truly meant what he was saying. Mrs. Thompson stepped closer to her son, her hand gently resting on his arm. "He's right," she said softly, glancing at Emma. "You've made a difference today. And not just for me, but for both of us." Richard's eyes met Emma's again, and for a moment, she could see a side of him rarely shown to the public, human, vulnerable, and appreciative of simple kindness. "I'd like to thank you properly," he said, "not just with words, but Perhaps a moment of your time. I'd like to hear more about you and how someone like you chooses to care so selflessly. Emma hesitated, unsure if she should accept the offer. She was just a waitress, an ordinary person with an ordinary life. Why would someone like him want to know her story? And yet, there was no arrogance or entitlement in his tone. There was a genuine curiosity, a sincere desire to connect. I suppose I could talk for a few minutes, she said finally, smiling shyly. If you want. Richard nodded appreciatively. Thank you. That means more than you know. They began to walk slowly down the street together, Mrs. Thompson at Richard's side, Emma just a few steps ahead. Passers-by glanced curiously at the unusual group, an ordinary young woman walking with a wealthy businessman and his elderly mother, but Emma didn't notice. She was focused on the moment, on the strange and unexpected way life had brought them together. As they walked, Emma found herself talking naturally, sharing small stories about her life, her work, and her belief in helping others whenever possible. Richard listened intently, nodding and occasionally asking questions. There was no judgment, no sense of hierarchy, just a genuine conversation between people connected by an extraordinary series of events. Emma realized that this chance meeting was more than just a coincidence. It was a reminder that life had a way of intertwining people's paths in unexpected ways. A simple act of kindness had brought her face to face with a man she had only read about in the news, a man whose life seemed so different from hers, yet whose humanity was undeniable in this moment. By the time they reached a quieter part of the street, the sun had nearly set, casting a golden hue over the city. Emma felt a sense of calm and purpose. She had walked into a situation that had begun as ordinary, only to discover that small actions could lead to moments that changed lives in ways no one could anticipate. And in that moment, she understood that the connection she had forged with Mrs. Thompson and her son was real, meaningful, and something that would stay with her forever. After that chance meeting on the street, Emma couldn't stop thinking about Richard Thompson. She replayed the brief conversation over and over in her mind, the way he had looked at her with genuine curiosity, the way his usually sharp and distant demeanor softened when he spoke about her small act of kindness. It was surreal to think that her simple gesture of helping an elderly woman carry groceries could ripple outward in such unexpected ways. And yet, there it was. Her life had intersected with theirs in a meaningful and unforgettable moment. A few days later, Emma received a call from Mrs. Thompson. Her voice was warm but carried a hint of excitement. Emma, would you like to visit Richard? He wants to meet you again. Nothing formal, just to talk. Emma was hesitant at first. She wasn't used to being in the presence of wealthy and influential people. Her life was simple. Her routines revolved around work at the diner, helping neighbors, and caring for her younger brother. But something in Mrs. Thompson's tone encouraged her. She agreed. When Emma arrived at Richard Thompson's office, she was struck by the contrast between the opulent surroundings and the warm welcome she received. She expected stiff formality, assistants giving strict instructions, perhaps even a sense of judgment. Instead, Richard greeted her with a genuine smile, and Mrs. Thompson introduced her once again, speaking of how Emma's small act of kindness had touched both their lives. Emma felt her nervousness ease slightly. Richard led Emma to a quiet lounge in his office building, far removed from the hustle and bustle of the business floor. They sat down, and for the first time, Emma saw Richard not as a billionaire businessman, but as a human being who had experienced vulnerability and gratitude firsthand. There were no walls, no barriers, just an honest conversation. I've been thinking a lot about that day, Richard began, his voice calm and thoughtful. You have no idea how rare it is for me to encounter someone who acts with genuine kindness, without expecting anything in return. Most people interact with me because of my position, my wealth, or what I can offer them. You did it simply because it was the right thing to do. Emma felt a warmth rise in her chest. I didn't think much about it, she said softly. I just saw a woman struggling and wanted to help. I didn't expect anything in return. That's exactly what makes it extraordinary, Richard replied. Most people would walk past, pretending not to notice. Most people are too busy with their own lives to stop and help. But you noticed, and that simple action reminded me of something I've forgotten over the years, that the smallest gestures of kindness can have a powerful impact. Emma listened, amazed. She had helped people before, of course, but she had never considered the possibility that one small act could leave such a lasting impression on someone like Richard Thompson, a man whose life was full of influence, money, and responsibilities. In that moment, she realized that even ordinary people could make a difference, even in extraordinary circumstances. As they continued to talk, Richard shared stories of his life, how he had built his business from the ground up, the pressures of managing wealth and employees, and the loneliness that often accompanied success. He spoke candidly about how rarely he encountered people who cared without ulterior motives. Emma found herself relating to his experiences in unexpected ways, recognizing that human emotions, fear, hope, gratitude, and love, transcend wealth and status. Mrs. Thompson watched from across the room, a quiet smile on her face. She knew that Emma's presence and Richard's newfound perspective were creating a rare bond, one that would influence both of their lives moving forward. Emma, in turn, began to feel a sense of purpose she had not known before. Her ordinary life suddenly felt connected to something larger, more meaningful. Richard leaned forward, his expression earnest. Emma, I want to do something in honor of what you've shown me. You've reminded me that kindness is more important than ambition alone. I want to implement initiatives in my company to help people, to make their lives easier and better, just as you made my Mother's Day easier. And I want you to help guide me, because you've shown me what genuine care looks like. Emma blinked, momentarily stunned. She had never imagined being asked to influence the operations of a major business, simply because she had helped an elderly woman carry groceries. It was overwhelming but also inspiring. She realized that sometimes life had a way of rewarding authenticity and compassion in the most unexpected ways. Over the next few hours, they discussed ideas, plans, and strategies, not about money or profit, but about real change in people's lives. Emma suggested simple ways the company could assist local communities, support employees, and contribute to charitable causes. Richard listened intently, asking questions and valuing her perspective. It was remarkable to witness the intersection of ordinary generosity and extraordinary influence. By the time Emma left Richard's office, the sun had long set, and the city lights reflected in the glass towers around her. She walked home slowly, reflecting on the day's events. A single, small act of kindness had transformed into something much bigger. A connection with people she never imagined meeting, an opportunity to make a broader impact, and a deep realization of the power each individual holds to affect others' lives. For Emma, this experience became a life-changing moment in more ways than one. She realized that being kind, being empathetic, and noticing others in need were not just small gestures. They were actions with the potential to ripple outward, changing lives in ways she could never fully anticipate. And for Richard Thompson, her simple act had reminded him of the humanity that lay beneath the layers of business, wealth, and social expectations. Emma returned to her apartment that night, exhausted but filled with a sense of purpose and hope. She understood now that life could surprise anyone at any moment, that small acts mattered, and that even the simplest gestures could lead to extraordinary opportunities. She had helped an elderly woman with groceries, and in doing so, she had changed her own life and the lives of two people she would never forget. After the life-changing meeting with Richard Thompson, Emma returned to her daily routine at the diner, expecting life to feel ordinary again. Yet, something inside her had shifted. She carried a quiet confidence and a renewed sense of purpose that made even the long hours at work feel meaningful. Every interaction, every smile exchanged with a customer, now seemed connected to a larger picture. She understood that even small gestures could resonate far beyond her immediate perception. Meanwhile, Richard Thompson couldn't stop thinking about Emma. Her sincerity, her humility, and the effortless kindness she had shown his mother had struck a chord in a way few people ever had. For a man accustomed to people approaching him with self-interest, her actions were like a breath of fresh air. He realized that while he had built a successful business and amassed wealth, he had neglected the importance of genuine human connection, empathy, and the small acts of kindness that truly shape lives. Within weeks, Richard began implementing subtle changes in his company. He started by encouraging employees to pay attention to small acts of kindness among themselves. A simple thank you or acknowledgement of someone's efforts was no longer overlooked. He initiated a program where employees could propose ways the company could support the local community, helping struggling families, assisting elderly neighbors, or supporting local schools. Emma's influence, though indirect, was the spark for this transformation. One afternoon, Emma received an unexpected invitation. Richard wanted her to visit his company to see some of the initiatives firsthand. She hesitated at first, unsure if she belonged in such a world of boardrooms and polished floors, but curiosity and a desire to help others encouraged her to accept. When she arrived, she was greeted warmly by staff who explained how Emma's story had inspired them. They shared examples of small projects, like volunteering at local food banks, helping elderly residents with chores, and organizing free health checkups for the community. Emma watched in awe. The ripple effect of her simple act, helping Mrs. Thompson carry groceries, had now reached hundreds of people, extending far beyond what she could have imagined. She realized that even ordinary individuals have the power to spark extraordinary changes, especially when their actions are rooted in genuine care for others. During her visit, Richard took her aside. "Emma," he said, "I want you to understand how much impact you've made. It's not just about the programs we've started. It's about the way people are thinking differently, noticing each other, helping each other, and believing that even small acts matter. You've reminded us all of that." Emma smiled quietly, feeling both proud and humbled. "I never expected any of this," she admitted. "I just wanted to help someone who needed it. I didn't think it could lead to all of this." "That's exactly it," Richard replied. "It's the unexpected power of small, genuine actions. You didn't do it for recognition, for reward, or even to make an impact. And that's why it matters so much. Because real kindness isn't calculated. It's authentic, and it spreads naturally from one person to another." Emma's visits to the company became more frequent, not in a formal capacity but as a guide and source of inspiration. She shared her experiences, offered practical suggestions, and encouraged employees to see the value in small gestures. Over time, she noticed that staff members became more considerate, more empathetic, and more willing to step outside their routines to help others. The ripple effect didn't stop there. News of the company's initiatives began to spread through the local community. People started sharing stories about how employees had helped them or their neighbors, how small acts had brightened their days, or how a friendly gesture had made them feel noticed and valued. Emma realized that the simple act she had performed days ago was no longer just a personal story. It had become a living example of how kindness could inspire action, connection, and compassion. Even beyond the company, Richard began encouraging other business leaders in the city to consider similar initiatives. He spoke at community events about the importance of empathy, human connection, and noticing the people around us. Emma often listened quietly, amazed that her small, seemingly insignificant act of helping someone with groceries had now influenced not just one family, but an entire network of individuals and organizations. Emma also saw the ripple effect in her own life. Customers at the diner started sharing their own stories of kindness, of how they had been inspired to help someone, even in small ways, after hearing about Emma's encounter with Mrs. Thompson. She realized that acts of kindness, no matter how small, have a way of traveling beyond the immediate moment, touching lives that we may never even see firsthand. The most profound lesson Emma learned was about the interconnectedness of humanity. One person's action can lead to a chain reaction, affecting lives in ways that are unpredictable and extraordinary. She thought about the day she helped Mrs. Thompson, how it had led to meeting Richard, influencing his company, and inspiring the community. The realization was both humbling and empowering. Emma continued her work at the diner, but her perspective had changed. She greeted every person with more patience, listened more attentively, and offered help whenever she could, no matter how small. She understood that every act of kindness mattered, no matter how ordinary it seemed at the time. And she knew that the ripple effect of her actions could extend far beyond her imagination, just as it had in the story of gratitude, compassion, and human connection. By the end of the month, Emma received a simple letter from Richard. In it, he thanked her again, acknowledging the role she had played in creating a culture of kindness within his company and inspiring the community. Emma held the letter close, feeling the full weight of the ripple she had created with her single act. She realized that true change doesn't always come from grand gestures or money. It comes from noticing others, caring, and acting, even in small ways. Emma smiled, thinking about how far one small, selfless act could go. A single afternoon, carrying groceries for an elderly woman, had set in motion something far greater than she had ever imagined. And she knew, deep down, that the ripple effect would continue, touching more lives in ways she might never see, but would always be a part of.